I caught my husband texting my sister late at night, and when I confronted them, they had the nerve to blame me for overreacting. I'm still reeling, feeling like I'm stuck in some alternate reality. I haven't slept much since, and I need to get this off my chest because my brain is spinning. It all started at 1:47 a.m. when I woke up to my husband's phone buzzing on the nightstand. Normally, he's a ridiculously heavy sleeper, doesn't even flinch when his phone goes off, but for some reason I was wide awake, just alert. I thought maybe it was a work notification, something harmless. But then I saw the screen light up, and there it was, my sister's name. Now, some context. My sister and I have always had a weird relationship. We're not super close, but we're not estranged either. She's the outgoing, flirtatious type. I'm quieter, more reserved. I've never had a real reason to distrust her, but seeing her name pop up on my husband's phone at almost 2 a.m., my stomach dropped like a rock. I didn't grab the phone right away. I just stared, trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe she needed help, or maybe she was drunk and texting randomly. But then it buzzed again. And again. By the third message, my gut instinct took over. I grabbed the phone and unlocked it. We know each other's passcodes, or at least we did. What I saw made my heart sink. The texts weren't outright explicit, but they were definitely not the kind you'd send your sister-in-law in the middle of the night. Stuff like, "Can't stop thinking about earlier," and "Wish you were here right now." My sister replied with things like, "You're making me blush, stop it," and "I told you we shouldn't talk like this anymore, but you're impossible." I swear, I felt like I was going to throw up right there in bed. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I scrolled up and oh, there was so much more. Messages going back weeks, flirty emojis, inside jokes, even references to times they'd been alone together. One message from him said, "You looked amazing last week. Wish I could have kissed you goodbye." I remembered that week. We'd had a family dinner, and my sister left early. I didn't think anything of it then, but now? Everything felt suspicious. I was trying to figure out if I was dreaming. This couldn't be real, right? This couldn't be my life. I glanced at my husband, still fast asleep, snoring like he didn't have a care in the world. My chest felt tight. I could barely breathe. Part of me wanted to wake him up, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions without the full story. Was there a full story? Was I misinterpreting this? I was spiraling. After about 10 minutes of debating, I screenshotted the messages and sent them to my phone. I needed evidence in case he tried to deny it later. Then I sat there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in. As soon as he woke up, I confronted him. I told him I'd seen the texts and asked point-blank what was going on with my sister. His reaction? He didn't even look shocked or apologetic. He got angry, snatched his phone, and accused me of invading his privacy. He said things like, "Why were you going through my phone?" and "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I couldn't believe it. I asked if he thought it was appropriate to text my sister like that, and he doubled down, saying they were harmless messages and I was being paranoid. Harmless? Seriously? I told him I wasn't stupid, that the messages were clearly flirty and inappropriate. That's when he hit me with, "You're so insecure, this is why I can't talk to you about anything." I was stunned. He'd flipped the whole situation, making it my fault. I kept trying to get a straight answer, but he stonewalled me and eventually stormed out, saying he wasn't going to deal with my drama. But it doesn't end there. Later that day, I got a text from my sister. It said, "You need to chill. You're overreacting and making this into something it's not." Excuse me? How am I overreacting to my husband and sister texting like that? I tried calling her, but she wouldn't pick up, just kept sending these cold, dismissive texts like I was the crazy one. At this point, I don't know who to trust. My husband's acting like I'm the problem, my sister's brushing me off, and I feel completely blindsided. I've been replaying every interaction between them, trying to spot red flags I missed. How long has this been going on? Is it just texting, or is there more? I don't know what to believe. The worst part? I don't feel like I can talk to anyone. How do you even start that conversation? "Hey, I think my husband and sister might be having an affair." It sounds insane even to me, and I'm living it. I feel like I'm trapped in a nightmare, and I don't know how to wake up. I don't know what to do next. Alright, here's the update, and I honestly hoped I wouldn't have to make one. Things have escalated in ways I couldn't have predicted, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how quickly everything unraveled. If you heard my first post on your channel name, you know I caught my husband texting my sister inappropriately, confronted them, and got gaslit into thinking I was the crazy one. A couple of days after the confrontation, I couldn't let it go. My husband was acting like everything was normal, like we hadn't just had a massive argument where he dismissed my concerns. He even told me, "We're not talking about this anymore. You're being ridiculous." Then came the family gathering. My mom was hosting a small dinner, and both my sister and husband were there. I didn't want to go, but I wasn't going to let them think I was hiding. So, I put on a brave face and showed up. The first thing I noticed was how my husband and sister were avoiding each other. Normally, they'd exchange pleasantries, but now there was this weird tension. I couldn't decide if it made me feel better or worse. I spent the evening trying to act normal, but inside, I was a mess. Every glance they exchanged, every awkward laugh, every time one of them left the room, I felt like I was watching a silent conversation I wasn't privy to. Then came the moment that pushed me over the edge. I walked into the kitchen to grab something, and there they were, my husband and sister, standing way too close, whispering. As soon as they saw me, they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. My husband stammered something about needing a drink, and my sister gave me this fake, innocent smile. My heart was pounding, my face felt like it was on fire. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I pulled my sister aside into a bedroom and told her we needed to talk. At first, she acted confused, like she had no idea what I was talking about. But when I brought up the texts, her demeanor changed. She rolled her eyes and said, "Are you still hung up on that? Seriously, it's not what you think." I asked her to explain what I was supposed to think about my husband texting her flirty messages at 2 a.m. And you know what she said? She laughed. She actually laughed and said, "You're so insecure, it's honestly kind of sad." I could feel my blood boiling. I told her this wasn't about insecurity, it was about basic respect and boundaries. That's when she dropped the first bombshell. She said, "If you're so concerned about him texting me, maybe you should ask him why he's been acting so distant with you lately. Ever think it's because of how you treat him?" I was stunned. I asked what the hell she was talking about, and she just shrugged and said, "Look, I'm not the problem here. Maybe if you paid attention to your marriage, you wouldn't be in this situation." I couldn't believe it. She was deflecting and blaming me for her inappropriate relationship with my husband. I was shaking. I stormed out and went straight to my husband. I told him I'd just spoken to my sister and demanded to know what was going on between them. And guess what? He didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed, like he was so over my drama, and said, "This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you. You always blow everything out of proportion." I asked him straight up if he was having an affair with my sister. He laughed, actually laughed, and said, "An affair? Are you serious? You're making something out of nothing. She's your sister, for God's sake." I reminded him of the texts and asked how he could justify them. His response? "They were just jokes. You're the one turning them into something they're not." At this point, I felt like I was losing my mind. He kept saying things like, "This is why we can't have an honest conversation," and "You're too sensitive." I was shaking with anger and frustration. Every time I tried to get a straight answer, he twisted it to make me feel like the crazy one. The worst part? He started bringing up unrelated things to distract me, like, "What about the time you went out with your friends and didn't text me back all night? You didn't see me freaking out." Like, what does that have to do with anything? I couldn't even argue with him. It felt like we were speaking two different languages. After he stormed off, my sister came up to me and said, "You need to let this go. You're going to ruin your marriage over nothing." Nothing. That's what they both kept calling it. Nothing. Meanwhile, my gut was screaming that there was so much more going on. Later that night, I did some digging. I went through our shared bank account and noticed transactions that didn't make sense, hotel charges, expensive dinners at places I've never been to. My heart sank. I remembered my husband's solo weekend trip a couple of months ago to clear his head. Suddenly, that trip didn't seem so innocent. The final straw? My cousin, who was at the family dinner, casually mentioned that my sister had stayed over at our house for a couple of days while I was out of town for work. I had no idea. No one told me. When I asked my husband about it, he said, "Oh, it was no big deal. She just needed a place to crash." No big deal? In my house with my husband while I wasn't there. I don't even know what to believe anymore. Every time I try to get to the truth, they twist things and make me feel like I'm in the wrong. I feel completely gaslit, isolated, and unsure of what's real. Final update. I wish I could say things got better, but they didn't. They spiraled even further out of control. What I've learned in the past few days has completely changed how I see my husband, my sister, and even myself. I don't think I'll ever look at relationships or trust the same way again. Here's the final update for your channel name. After my last post, I was done playing the passive, confused role. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by sitting around while my husband and sister gaslit me into oblivion. The turning point came when I overheard my husband on a phone call late one night. He thought I was asleep, but I could hear him pacing in the kitchen, whispering angrily. At first, I couldn't make out what he was saying, but then I heard him say her name, my sister's name. He said something like, "You have to stop texting me. She's already suspicious enough as it is." My heart was pounding. I grabbed my phone, recorded a snippet of the conversation just in case, and sat there shaking. This wasn't nothing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. They were hiding something and I was going to find out what. The next morning, I decided to confront them both together. I invited my sister over under the pretense of wanting to clear the air. My husband was visibly uncomfortable when I told him she was coming, but I played it cool. I knew if I acted upset, they'd twist it and make me look irrational again. When my sister arrived, I wasted no time. I sat them both down and said, "I know something's been going on between you two. I've seen the texts, I've heard the phone calls. I want the truth and I want it now." At first, they both denied everything. My sister put on her smug act, saying, "You're being ridiculous, there's nothing to tell." My husband looked like he'd seen a ghost, stammering that I was imagining things. That's when I pulled out my phone and played the snippet of his late-night conversation. The color drained from his face. My sister froze, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her expression. It was like watching their whole facade crumble in real time. My husband finally broke. He admitted they'd been texting and flirting for months, but swore it was just emotional, never physical. My sister chimed in, saying, "See, I told you it wasn't what you thought. Like that made it okay." I couldn't believe it. I asked if they really expected me to believe nothing physical happened, especially considering the hotel charges and the nights she stayed over while I was out of town. They didn't have an answer for that. But then came the real kicker. My sister blurted out, "This wouldn't have happened if you weren't so cold and controlling all the time." I felt like I'd been slapped. Not only were they justifying their betrayal, but they were blaming me for it. My husband nodded, adding, "You've been so distant lately, I didn't know how to talk to you anymore." I snapped. I told them their excuses were pathetic, that they had no right to blame me for their disgusting choices. I reminded them I'd been nothing but supportive and trusting, and this was how they repaid me. My sister tried to interrupt, but I shut her down. For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of clarity and strength. I wasn't going to let them gaslight me anymore. I kicked my sister out of the house and told her I wanted nothing to do with her. My husband begged me to stay and work things out, but I told him there was nothing left to work out. I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend that night, leaving him to stew in his guilt and lies. The next day, I got a call from my mom. Apparently, my sister had gone crying to her, painting herself as the victim and saying I was overreacting and ruining the family. I told my mom everything. The texts, the late-night calls, the gaslighting. To her credit, she was horrified and promised to talk to my sister. She also said she supported whatever decision I made about my marriage. But the story doesn't end there. A few days later, a mutual friend reached out with something I needed to know. She told me my husband had been messaging her two flirty, borderline inappropriate texts for months. She didn't say anything earlier because she didn't want to cause drama. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. This wasn't just about my sister. My husband was a serial manipulator, and I'd been blind to it for years. At that moment, everything clicked. The way he always downplayed my concerns, the subtle ways he made me feel like I was never enough. It wasn't just this situation, it was a pattern. I'd finally woken up to it. I've since filed for divorce and gone no contact with my sister, at least for the foreseeable future. I don't know if I'll ever forgive either of them, but right now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life and learning to trust myself again. The moral of the story? Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. And don't let anyone, no matter how close they are, convince you your feelings aren't valid. I spent too long doubting myself, and I'll never make that mistake again. Thanks for listening. Your channel name, Community. I'll keep you posted as I navigate this next chapter.